A 1 hour meditation on discipline, delay, and self-command. The thing you already know, somewhere inside you, right now, there is a thing you already know you must do. You didn't just discover it. You've known about it for a while, maybe a long while. It's the habit you keep meaning to break, the conversation you keep meaning to have, the account you keep meaning to open and finally look at honestly, the skill you keep meaning to learn, the work you keep meaning to finish, the excuse you keep meaning to stop making for yourself. This is not a stranger knocking on your door for the first time. It has visited you before, many times. At first, it came as a quiet thought, easy to wave away. Then it came back as a small discomfort, the kind you could still ignore if you were busy enough. Then it came as a consequence, delayed but real. And if you kept ignoring it, it eventually arrived as pressure. Given enough silence from you, pressure becomes crisis. That's the pattern. It is almost never sudden. Crisis is just neglect that has been given enough time to mature. Here is the uncomfortable truth. Life will be patient with you for a season, but its patience is not infinite. What you refuse to correct by choice, you will eventually be forced to correct by circumstance. That is not a threat. It is simply how cause and effect behave when nobody interrupts them. But there's good news buried inside that hard truth. If you act early, before you are forced to, the same correction that would have broken you under pressure can be made almost gently. A small adjustment made today can prevent a disaster years from now. A hard conversation held while it's still just uncomfortable can save you from a rupture that would otherwise be unbearable. A disciplined habit built before it's urgently needed can spare you from ruin, from broken trust, from the quiet erosion of your own self-respect. There is real dignity in acting before you're compelled to. Nobody waits for the roof to cave in before patching a leak, not if they're paying attention. Nobody waits for total collapse before taking their health seriously, not if they actually care about their future. Nobody waits for the debt collector's call before examining their spending, not if they want to keep their peace of mind. The person who acts early hears the quiet warning and takes it seriously long before it has to shout. Most of us, though, don't do that. We hear the warning, and then we negotiate with it. Not now, when things settle down. After this next season, it's not really that serious yet. I still have time. These phrases sound reasonable. They sound like patience, like prudence, like waiting for the right moment. But listen closely and you'll hear what they really are. The polite language of surrender. Delay doesn't make the necessary thing go away. It just makes it more expensive. The duty you postpone doesn't stay the same size while you wait. It grows. The unpaid account accumulates interest. The unlearned skill becomes a missed window. The unspoken truth curdles into resentment. The unchecked appetite tightens its grip until it isn't a habit anymore. It's a master. Nothing that is truly necessary disappears just because you look away from it. It waits for you. And the whole time it waits, the price goes up. The difference between choosing and being chosen. For there's a well-known idea that discipline is the bridge between what you want and what you actually achieve. That's true, but it's incomplete. Discipline isn't just about doing the things that excite you or move you toward your dreams. Real discipline is doing what's necessary before comfort, fear, or pride get the chance to talk you out of it. It's the ability to give yourself an order while the choice still belongs to you. Because here's the thing, you will eventually change. Almost everyone does, one way or another. The real question isn't whether change will come. It's whether you'll walk into it or get dragged into it. The person who chooses correction on their own terms keeps their dignity intact. The person who is forced into it by a health scare, a financial collapse, a relationship falling apart, often pays for that same lesson with humiliation, loss, and years of regret. Both people may end up changed, but one changed as someone in command of their own life. The other changed as someone who had no other option left. Choose command. It's available to you right now before anything forces your hand. A good place to start is to ask yourself a very specific question. What duty have I been avoiding simply because it isn't pleasant? That's usually exactly where the necessary thing is hiding. It rarely announces itself with excitement. It doesn't flatter your imagination or promise an immediate reward. Most of the time, it just quietly demands honesty, patience, repetition, and some amount of discomfort. Do it anyway. The necessary thing doesn't care whether you enjoy it. It only cares whether your future depends on it. You might dislike keeping track of your money, but financial confusion won't lower its price just because tracking numbers bores you. You might dislike studying, but opportunity doesn't relax its standards because you'd rather be doing something easier. You might dislike confronting a habit that's quietly costing you your health or your peace, but the habit will keep gaining strength for exactly as long as you refuse to face it. You might dislike saying no to people, but every reluctant yes chips away at the energy you need for what actually matters to you. Your dislike is real, but it's only a feeling, and a feeling is not an argument. Purpose has to be stronger than mood, or mood will run your entire life for you. There are certain duties that exist precisely to be done without wanting to do them. They're not there to make you feel good in the moment. They're there to train your will. They prove to yourself, more than anyone, that you are not simply a servant to whatever mood happens to be passing through you that day. Every single time you do the necessary thing, despite not feeling like it, you strengthen the part of you that can eventually be trusted with bigger responsibilities. Achievement doesn't really ask what you want. It asks something sharper. What can you make yourself do when wanting has nothing to do with it? Can you follow through on a principle when there's no pleasure attached to it? Can you carry a duty when nobody's watching and nobody's clapping? A person who needs to feel inspired before they'll act cannot be counted on, not by others, and eventually not even by themselves. Inspiration is good for starting something. It is discipline that finishes it. What you're really building over time is the capacity to act without ceremony. No dramatic buildup. No long internal speech. No perfectly ideal conditions. Just a clear, quiet command to yourself. This is necessary, and it will be done. That single shift in attitude can change the entire shape of a life. It removes the drama from responsibility. So much suffering around duty isn't caused by the duty itself. It's caused by how long we negotiate with it before finally starting. People think about the hard task, dread it, resent it, put it off, and carry the weight of it in their minds for weeks or months or years. Meanwhile, the task itself might only take an hour. The resistance to the task is what actually eats up the season. Don't spend more energy avoiding the necessary thing than the thing itself would ever cost you. Name it. Face it. Begin it. Completion brings a kind of relief that delay can never give you, no matter how long you wait. The peace that follows obedience. There's a particular kind of peace that only shows up after you've done what you know you're supposed to do. It isn't comfort exactly, and it isn't ease, but it's real, and it's steady. Your mind settles when it knows it hasn't betrayed its own judgment. A duty left undone doesn't just sit quietly in the background. It disturbs you. It's there in the low hum of every hour, even the ones that seem unrelated to it. It quietly weakens your confidence because deep down you know your actions aren't lining up with what you actually believe you should be doing. That private disagreement between what you know and what you do becomes a kind of hidden tax on your energy. You can keep functioning on the outside while carrying unfinished business on the inside, but you shouldn't have to. Don't carry what you can simply finish. So much of what feels like the weight of life isn't actually placed on us by fate. It's accumulated, piece by piece, through delay. An unanswered message, a debt you haven't looked at closely, a promise you let slide, a skill you never got around to practicing, a truth you never said out loud, a decision you keep pushing to next week. One by one, these things gather until a person starts to feel crushed by life in general, when really they're carrying the specific, nameable weight of things they never finished. You don't have to lift all of it today. Pick one. Choose the duty that has waited the longest, or the one that's quietly doing the most damage right now. Start there. A single act of follow-through can restore your sense of command over your own life. It tells your mind, the long postponement is ending. It starts a new record. Don't wait until you feel confident enough to begin. Confidence tends to show up after you act, not before. The person who says, "I'll do it once I feel stronger," has the order backwards. Strength is built through action. especially the kind of action you take while you're still reluctant to take it. The first step might feel heavy because the habit of avoiding it has had time to grow strong. Take it anyway. The second step might still push back against you. Take it too. Eventually, your mind begins to accept that the command is real, that this time is different. This is how self-respect gets rebuilt. Not through wishing, not through regret, not through imagining some improved future version of yourself, but through actually doing the necessary thing today in whatever small form it takes. Small things are not minor things. It's tempting to think that the necessary thing has to be big in order to matter. It doesn't. Life is largely built out of small obediences and small betrayals, repeated so often they become the architecture of a person's entire existence. A small daily habit, repeated without much thought, can quietly decide the entire direction of a life. A small expense, repeated the same way, can turn into serious financial strain. A small act of dishonesty, left unexamined, can start a slow decline into a pattern of evasion. A small refusal to keep learning can, given enough years, become a real and painful limitation. None of these feel dramatic in the moment. That's exactly what makes them dangerous. Choose obedience while it's still small. The person who waits for a major crisis to reveal their character often finds, too late, that their character was already being shaped and weakened in 100 minor moments they didn't think were important. Courage in a big, visible moment is built by discipline in 1,000 small, invisible ones. A person doesn't suddenly become honest under intense pressure if they've spent years practicing small evasions in peaceful times. A person doesn't suddenly become organized in a crisis if they've tolerated quiet disorder when no one was watching. A person doesn't suddenly become brave when a real opportunity appears if they've flinched away from every small test leading up to it. Prepare before the moment demands it. Handle the necessary thing while it's still manageable. This is one of the real secrets behind people who seem to have unusually strong, stable lives. It's not that they never meet a crisis. It's that they reduce how many unnecessary crises they meet by correcting causes early before neglect has time to compound. So ask yourself plainly, where has disorder quietly begun in my life? Where has some appetite started to take more control than it should? Where has fear begun to make my decisions for me? Where has pride blocked a correction I know I need to make? Where has comfort slowly replaced purpose as the thing steering my choices? Don't answer in vague terms. Vagueness is where avoidance hides most comfortably. Be specific. Say the actual thing. I need to get this habit under control. I need to finish this piece of work. I need to learn this particular skill. I need to have this conversation if repairing the relationship is still honorable. I need to step back from this association because it keeps weakening me. I need to stop spending in a way that has no purpose behind it. I need to finally start the discipline I've been putting off. Once you name something plainly, it becomes much harder to keep excusing. It stands in front of you clearly instead of hiding in fog. And once you can see it clearly, you can actually act on it. Stop debating what you've already decided. There's a subtle trap a lot of people fall into. They keep relitigating a decision their own conscience already settled a long time ago. It isn't that they lack information. They lack follow-through. So they ask the same question again and again. Do I really need to do this? Hoping that somewhere in the 100th asking, an easier answer will finally show up. But repeated questioning, once the answer is already clear, isn't really thinking anymore. It's a quiet form of rebellion, just dressed up to look like careful consideration. If the necessary thing is genuinely clear to you, stop asking whether it should be done. Start asking how it will be done. That single shift moves your mind out of resistance and into planning, which is a much more useful place to be. If a debt needs to be addressed, how will you organize the process of facing it? If a skill needs to be learned, what specific hour of your week will you give to it? If a hard conversation needs to happen, what exact truth needs to be said? And in what spirit should it be delivered? If a habit needs to be broken, what condition is currently feeding it? And what new practice needs to take its place? Necessity becomes much less intimidating once you break it down into steps. A large duty can overwhelm the imagination if you try to hold the whole thing in your mind at once. So don't. You don't need to move the entire mountain in a single afternoon. You just need to move the first stone, then the next one, then the one after that. Real progress begins the moment your mind stops suffering over the size of the entire burden and simply accepts the portion that belongs to the hour in front of you. Don't dismiss partial progress as insignificant. Faithful, repeated, partial progress is what completion is actually made of. No one repairs an entire life in a single afternoon, but you can end one specific pattern of dishonesty today. You can finish one task you've been avoiding. You can sit down and record one honest account of where your money actually goes. You can begin 1 hour of real study. You can offer one overdue apology, even if pride has been delaying it. You can refuse one temptation you've been giving in to automatically. You can place one single hour of your day fully under your own command. These aren't small victories. They're proof to yourself, which is the audience that matters most, that necessity no longer has to control you through fear or threat. You're learning to govern yourself through choice instead. That distinction is the entire difference between drifting through a life and actually building one. Reading the signs before they become sentences. A person who is drifting waits for consequences to force them to move. A person who is maturing reads the early signs and acts on their own initiative, without needing the whip of disaster to get them going. Life, if you pay attention, tends to give warnings before it hands out sentences. Persistent fatigue can be a sign. A creeping sense of disorder can be a sign. The same conflict showing up again and again with different people in different settings can be a sign. Debt that keeps climbing can be a sign. A quiet loss of other people's respect can be a sign. A fading sense of enthusiasm for things that used to excite you can be a sign. The same failure, showing up in a slightly different costume each time, is almost certainly a sign. Don't dismiss these signals just because they're inconvenient to notice. Signs are, in a strange way, a form of mercy. They tell you exactly where correction is needed before the cost of ignoring it becomes severe. If you listen while the signal is still quiet, you can change course gently, almost invisibly. If you refuse to listen, change will still eventually arrive, but it may show up in a form you have no ability to negotiate with. Often, the real choice in life isn't whether you'll change. It's whether you'll change on your own terms or under force. Choose your own terms. That choice opens the door to a further level of self-command, but only if you also learn to make the necessary changes without bitterness. It isn't enough to obey the requirement while resenting it privately the entire time. You have to genuinely understand that necessity isn't your enemy. It's closer to a stern, unglamorous friend, one that's trying to protect you from a much heavier consequence down the line. And obedience gets a lot easier once you stop treating it as an insult to your identity. So many people grow bitter toward the very discipline that could actually free them. They resent it because it exposes an area where they've been careless. They resent correction because accepting it means admitting something has gone wrong. They resent sacrifice because it asks comfort to step down from its throne, even briefly. But necessity isn't attacking you. It's the voice of order, calling you back before disorder turns into judgment. The person who understands this doesn't argue with the hard thing. They study it instead. They ask, what law did I violate here? What habit did I let slide? What truth did I keep putting off? What responsibility did I quietly neglect? Then they place themselves under the discipline, not because discomfort is enjoyable, but because they'd rather choose correction than be handed a consequence. Learn to see necessity as a form of protection. It can feel severe because it interrupts pleasure, pride, and ease. But very often, it's standing directly between you and a much greater suffering. The discipline of saving interrupts your spending in the moment, but it protects your freedom later. The discipline of studying interrupts idle time, but it protects your future opportunities. The discipline of honest speech interrupts a false, comfortable peace, but it protects genuine respect. The discipline of caring for your health interrupts a bit of indulgence, but it protects your strength for decades. The discipline of steady work interrupts comfort, but it protects your sense of purpose. What looks like hardship in the moment is often mercy, just wearing the costume of duty. If life keeps nudging you to correct something, listen. If your mind keeps circling back to the same unresolved matter, listen. If the same kind of trouble keeps returning under a slightly different name, listen. Repetition is frequently instruction that hasn't yet been obeyed. A lesson that gets ignored doesn't quietly retire. It comes back later with more weight behind it. Awareness, not fear. None of this means you should live in fear. It means you should live awake. Fear imagines danger and then freezes. Awareness looks honestly at cause and effect and takes action. Fear says something terrible might happen. Awareness says this particular habit, if I keep going, is going to produce a specific result I don't actually want. So I'm going to change it now, while I still can, calmly. Fear tends to be confusion, wearing an urgent mask. Awareness is closer to real strength. Cultivate the second one. Take an honest look at what's actually operating in your life right now. Every cause you're feeding is moving steadily towards some effect, whether you're watching it or not. Your spending patterns are heading somewhere. Your habit of studying or not studying is heading somewhere. The people you spend your time with are shaping something. Your daily speech is shaping something. Your everyday habits, the tiny automatic ones, are all quietly heading toward a harvest. Nothing in this picture is standing still. Even neglect is moving. It's moving toward its own kind of harvest. If you don't like the harvest a particular habit is preparing for you, stop defending the habit. Don't ask whether it feels familiar or comfortable. Familiarity isn't evidence of wisdom. Ask instead what it's actually creating in your life. Something can feel comfortable and still be quietly destructive. Something can feel difficult and still be the exact thing that's saving your future. Comfort is not proof of wisdom, and difficulty is not proof that you're doing something wrong. Judge by the actual consequence, not by how something makes you feel in the moment. The necessary thing is usually the act that interrupts a harmful consequence before it fully ripens. It may not be popular with your appetite in the moment, but it's loyal to your future. It may disappoint your pride for a little while, but it protects your reputation over the long run. It may cost effort right now, but it saves you a great deal of strength later. Choose to obey your future over the appetite of the present moment. This, more than anything else, is the real foundation of self-command. The weight of waiting for someone else. A lot of people don't fail because they can't see what needs to be done. They fail because they can't bring themselves to actually do it until the pain becomes unbearable. They wait for pressure. They wait for a threat. They wait for a real loss. They wait for someone else to finally demand what their own conscience has been quietly asking for the whole time. Don't be that person. Don't wait for someone else to discipline you. Don't wait for circumstances to corner you into action. Don't wait for embarrassment to finally wake you up. Give yourself the command while the choice still carries dignity. There's a quiet kind of nobility in voluntary discipline. It says that you've become the one governing your own lower impulses rather than the other way around. It says you're capable of acting for reasons more important than immediate pleasure. It says you can see past today's craving into tomorrow's freedom. This is exactly what separates the person building something real from the person simply drifting through their days. The drifter tends to be controlled by whatever happens to be closest at hand. If ease is nearby, they choose ease. If fear shows up, they obey fear. If approval is available, they chase it. If temptation appears, they give in. Their life isn't really governed from the inside. It's pushed around from the outside, moment by moment. The builder, by contrast, carries an internal government. They decide according to purpose. They act according to principle. They correct according to truth. They keep going according to discipline. Build that kind of internal government for yourself. Start with one necessary thing, just one that you've delayed long enough already. Don't pick the easiest duty on your list purely to soothe yourself in the moment. Choose the one that's quietly claiming the most authority over your mind. The one you think about at night. The one you avoid bringing up in conversation. The one you make excuses for when you're alone with yourself. The one you already know, deep down, would change the entire direction of your life if you simply obeyed it. Start there. If it's too large to face all at once, divide it into pieces. But don't let the division shrink how seriously you take it. A divided duty isn't a dismissed duty. It's simply been made small enough to actually act on. Write down the first step. Set a real time for it. Remove whatever condition has been enabling your delay. If the necessary thing is studying, prepare the place and the hour for it. If it's financial order, gather your actual numbers. If it's a hard conversation, write down the truth plainly before you say it out loud. If it's your health, choose a discipline you can begin today, not next month. If it's work, define exactly what a finished result looks like. Don't leave the necessary thing floating in vague general language. Vague duties almost never get done. Specific duties, on the other hand, tend to command real action. A person can say, for years, I need to improve my life and change absolutely nothing. But when they say, at the start of the day, I will study this subject for 1 hour, or tonight, I will write down every debt and every expense honestly, or tomorrow, I will finally finish the work I've been postponing, the vague burden turns into a definite order. Give yourself definite orders, then follow through on them. Proof over promise. When you've been postponing something for a while, your first move back toward it should be clear and modest, not grand. Big, sweeping promises made out of guilt tend to collapse the moment the emotional intensity fades. Instead, make a command you can actually keep today. The kept command matters far more than the impressive-sounding vow ever will. Self-respect is rebuilt through commands you actually keep, not through the size of the commitment you announce. If you've neglected a skill for years, 1 honest hour of study is worth more than a dramatic public declaration about your future plans. If your finances have been allowed to drift into disorder, 1 truthful, complete record of where your money actually goes is worth more than an inspiring speech about the wealth you'll build someday. If you've been avoiding an apology, 1 sincere, direct conversation is worth more than weeks of private, silent regret. Do the thing that actually proves change is happening. Proof heals the mind. Regret on its own doesn't. Regret without action can quietly become its own form of self-indulgence. It lets a person feel serious about their situation without ever actually changing it. They mourn the waste. They criticize themselves. They remember what they should have done, and then they simply continue exactly as before. Don't confuse regret with real change. Regret feels the pain of the old direction. Genuine change actually turns toward a new one. Even if your first step is small, let it be real. Reality gives your mind something new and solid to believe in. The old tired story says, I always delay. The new action says quietly, I've begun. The old habit insists, this will get avoided again, just like always. The new action answers back, no, command has returned. That evidence carries real weight. Every necessary thing you do willingly reinforces your belief that you're capable of governing yourself. Every duty you face before you're forced to build a little more of your inner authority. Eventually, the person who does this begins to trust their own command more and more. They start to walk through their days differently because they know they're no longer sitting around waiting for a crisis to move them into action. That confidence isn't arrogance. It's earned self-respect. And earned self-respect turns out to be one of the deepest sources of real achievement a person can have. Someone who genuinely respects themselves doesn't require constant outside pressure. They don't need threats hanging over them to finish what they start. They don't need shame to correct their own conduct. They don't need an emergency to become industrious. They simply become self-starting. And that quality, quietly, attracts responsibility. Other people notice, even if they never say it out loud, whether someone acts early or late, whether they hide from difficulty or face it, whether they admit inconvenient facts, whether they correct their own course without needing to be forced into it. The world, more often than not, chooses to place real weight on the person who doesn't need to be driven. What every delayed duty teaches about you. Think, for a moment, not just about the present duty in front of you, but about the reputation being quietly built by the way you meet it. Every delayed correction teaches something about who you are. Every early correction teaches something different. If you consistently avoid necessary action until circumstances force your hand, the people around you eventually learn that you require pressure to move. If you consistently act when principle first calls, they learn that you carry your own command inside you. One of those reputations limits what people will offer you. The other one attracts far more of it. The necessary thing, then, isn't just about escaping trouble. It's about becoming genuinely fit for greater trust. Someone who handles small necessities early may later be trusted with much larger possibilities. Someone who repeatedly mishandles small duties shouldn't be surprised when bigger doors stay closed to them. Life tends to examine the foundation before it adds any real weight on top. If the foundation already cracks under ordinary duty, why would anyone, including you, expect it to hold under greater responsibility? Strengthen the foundation first. Begin exactly where the neglect has quietly been living. A neglected area of your life is never actually neutral. It might be quiet on the surface, but underneath, it's working against you. Neglected health slowly works toward weakness. Neglected accounts slowly works toward pressure. Neglected relationships slowly works toward distance. Neglected ability slowly works toward regret. Neglected character slowly works toward exposure. Neglect isn't passive, it's active. It's steadily building exactly the outcome you don't want. Necessary action interrupts that process. It says plainly, this stops now. But those words only mean something if action follows them quickly. A lot of people say, this has to change, and then let it continue exactly as before. Their own words become background noise because no action ever backed them up. Don't weaken your own language that way. When you tell yourself something must change, put real action behind it soon. Your will responds to speed of obedience, not haste, but a genuine willingness to act promptly. The longer a clear command sits unacted on inside your mind, the weaker it becomes. Delay teaches your own will that its orders don't really need to be followed. Prompt action teaches your will the opposite, that its orders carry real authority. So when the necessary thing becomes clear, do something right away. Not everything at once, just something. One step taken immediately carries more real power than 100 good intentions left sitting on a shelf. Facing resistance. Expect resistance. It will show up, almost guaranteed. The old habit will argue with you. Comfort will plead its case. Pride will defend itself. Fear will exaggerate the risks. The people around you might, intentionally or not, discourage the change. Your own past attempts might whisper that you've tried and failed too many times before to bother trying again. You don't need to answer every one of those voices. You only need to obey the command you've already given yourself. Resistance isn't defeated primarily through argument. It's defeated through action, repeated consistently until resistance simply loses its confidence in its ability to stop you. At first, the necessary thing may feel genuinely heavy. Over time, it becomes part of your actual strength. The duty that once frightened you eventually becomes ordinary. The discipline that once felt severe eventually becomes natural. The truth that once seemed impossible to say out loud eventually becomes part of who you simply are. This is how people actually change. Not by waiting for some new personality to descend on them out of nowhere, but by obeying a necessary truth long enough that the obedience itself forms a new nature underneath them. And as that new nature strengthens, your relationship to necessity itself starts to shift. It stops feeling like a cruel interruption and starts to feel more like a guide. It begins pointing you toward the next weakness worth mastering, the next duty worth completing, the next standard worth setting, the next level of responsibility that life might be quietly preparing you for. Once necessity becomes a guide rather than an enemy, you stop waiting for comfortable conditions before you improve. You start to understand that every necessary duty is, in some way, pointing toward a larger capacity you haven't built yet. The very task you keep resisting might be exactly the task that trains the strength you've been asking for. The correction you keep avoiding might be the doorway to the freedom you say you want. The discipline that feels severe right now might be the instrument shaping you for the responsibility you claim to desire. Don't ask for a bigger opportunity while refusing the small preparation required for it. Opportunity doesn't simply ask whether you want more. It asks whether you're actually ready for more. It quietly examines the habits you've already formed, the promises you've already kept, the duties you've already completed, the truths you've already faced, and the weaknesses you've already brought under some kind of control. A person might want a higher position, but if they haven't mastered the smaller responsibilities in front of them, that higher position would only expose the gap. A person might want more wealth, but if they haven't learned to direct small amounts of money with any real judgment, A larger amount might simply enlarge the waist. A person might want more influence, but if their emotions still steer their speech, that influence could become genuinely dangerous in their hands. Life often withholds enlargement until necessity has had the chance to train real capacity. And that isn't punishment, it's preparation. You may be asking for a door to open while life is quietly asking you to repair the exact part of your character that would fail the moment you walked through it. You may be asking for recognition while life is asking you to build the kind of discipline that can hold up under recognition without becoming vain. You may be asking for authority while life is asking you to first master the temper that would otherwise misuse it. Don't resent the preparation. Simply obey it. Everything ordinary is training. The necessary thing in front of you might look completely unrelated to your bigger dream. Look again, more closely. The account you need to correct is quietly training your accuracy. The habit you need to break is training your self-command. The duty you need to finish is training your capacity to complete things. The subject you need to study is training your future usefulness. The conversation you need to have is training your courage. Each necessary thing is, in its own small way, building a piece of the person your future is actually going to require. Start asking, honestly, what is this particular difficulty training in me? That question alone can turn a discomfort into an instruction. It gives meaning to repetition. It brings a bit of dignity to tasks that would otherwise feel small and forgettable. If you have to rise early, maybe life is training you in command over your own body. If you have to save money carefully, maybe it's training your respect for limited resources. If you have to serve without recognition for a while, maybe it's training your independence from applause. If you have to forgive someone without becoming naive about them, maybe it's training strength without bitterness. If you have to begin again after a real failure, maybe it's training persistence, the kind that outlasts a single setback. Nothing necessary is ever really wasted, as long as it's obeyed with some understanding of what it's for. The difficulty becomes genuinely useful. The duty becomes a kind of school. The delay, if you finally push through it, becomes a forge. But if you keep resisting instead, the very same duty can start to feel like a prison. What should have trained you begins to torment you instead. The lesson keeps returning, again and again, wearing a slightly different disguise each time. A new place, a new season, a new person standing in for the same old pattern. You end up asking why life keeps repeating itself on you, when the honest answer might simply be that the instruction was never actually completed. Finish the lesson. Don't carry it forward into another year of your life. A person who avoids a necessary correction early tends to meet it later at a much higher cost. A person who avoids discipline in private tends to meet exposure in public eventually. A person who avoids governing their appetite while the stakes are small may one day be governed by that same appetite once the stakes are no longer small at all. Early correction is, in a very real sense, an act of kindness toward your own future self. Picture, honestly, the person you'll become if you keep delaying. Not with despair, with clear-eyed honesty. What will your finances look like if you keep refusing order? What will your health look like if you keep refusing discipline? What will your confidence look like if you keep breaking small promises to yourself? What will your opportunities look like if you keep refusing to study and prepare? Now picture the person you'll become if you start obeying necessity today. You probably won't transform overnight. Almost no one does. But you'll begin moving under your own command instead of drifting. Your accounts will get clearer. Your habits will get stronger. Your speech will get more exact. Your self-respect will start to return. Your days will begin to carry visible evidence of actual purpose. You are choosing, quietly, between these two versions of yourself every single time necessity speaks up. Don't choose the weaker version simply because the stronger one asks something uncomfortable of you right now. The discomfort passes. What you build in spite of it tends to stay. Discomfort is not always danger. One reason people avoid the necessary thing is that they confuse discomfort with danger. They feel uneasy, and they assume that uneasy feeling must mean the action is wrong for them. But real growth often feels uneasy at first. An honest conversation feels uneasy right up until the moment it finally brings relief. Studying a subject you've neglected feels uneasy until real knowledge starts to build genuine confidence. Facing the truth about your finances feels uneasy right up until the order it creates gives you back your freedom. Don't automatically obey every discomfort you feel. Examine it first. Some discomfort is a legitimate warning against genuine folly. Other discomfort is simply your resistance pushing back against growth. Clear judgment has to be able to tell the two apart. If a duty lines up with truth, with responsibility, with your character, and with your actual sense of purpose, then discomfort isn't a valid reason to avoid it. It's simply part of the price. Pay it, and pay it while it's still small. The price of daily study is far smaller than the price of staying ignorant. The price of regular, modest saving is far smaller than the price of eventual dependence on others. The price of disciplined, honest speech is far smaller than the price of broken trust. The price of honest work is far smaller than the price of long-term regret. Life tends to give discounts to the people who pay early, and it charges real interest to those who delay. This is exactly why voluntary discipline is a form of wealth even before any money shows up. It preserves your future strength. It reduces suffering you didn't have to experience. It prevents a great many troubles that other people will later mistakenly call bad luck or fate. What people often call fate is, more often than not, just delayed necessity finally arriving with authority behind it. Don't let fate take the blame for what neglect actually produced. Take command of the causes instead. Every result you see has roots underneath it. Feed the root, and the fruit eventually appears, whether that root is healthy or poisoned. So ask yourself, plainly, what am I actually planting day by day right now? If you plant disorder, disorder eventually returns to you. If you plant truth, truth eventually returns. If you plant discipline, discipline returns. If you plant courage, courage returns. If you plant delay, delay comes back with a bill attached to it. This law doesn't flatter anyone, and it doesn't hold grudges either. It simply produces according to the cause you gave it. Don't plead with the harvest while continuing to protect the seed that's producing it. Change the seed instead. Change the cause. Do the necessary thing at the level where the actual results are being formed. If a particular result keeps recurring in your life, the same conflict, the same unfinished project, the same failure under pressure, the same missed opportunity, look for the repeating cause behind it. There's almost always a habit sitting underneath, a repeated choice, a repeated fear, a repeated indulgence, a repeated refusal to look honestly at the truth. Find the repetition, and you'll find exactly where your own command needs to begin. The necessary thing often hides inside repetition. Don't just endure the pattern, study it. A pattern is, in its own way, life quietly telling you, here is the actual work. Once you see the work clearly, stop calling it a mystery. Start calling it an assignment. A person who treats their own weakness as some kind of permanent mystery can spend years simply discussing it. A person who treats it as an assignment starts correcting it. They stop saying, this is just how I am, and start saying, this is what needs to be trained. That one sentence quietly gives you back a real amount of power. Don't lock yourself inside old descriptions of who you are. You may have been careless in the past, but you can practice order now. You may have been fearful, but you can practice courage. You may have delayed constantly, but you can practice prompt action. You may have wasted a lot, but you can practice wise direction going forward. A practiced weakness became strong through simple repetition. A practiced strength can become just as strong through exactly the same mechanism. That truth is encouraging, but it's also demanding, because it takes away the comfort of excuse. You can no longer honestly say the necessary thing is impossible just because it's difficult. You can no longer say a habit is permanent just because it's old. Old doesn't mean rightful. Familiar doesn't mean final. Start practicing repetition in the opposite direction. If you've delayed for years, practice quick, immediate action on small matters. If you've avoided the truth, practice plain, honorable speech. If you've lived without much order, practice one honest written record each day. If appetite has been steering you, practice one deliberate refusal that strengthens your own command. Small acts, repeated consistently, become a new nature over time. Don't wait around for some grand transformation to arrive all at once. Build it brick by brick, command by command, duty by duty. That's how the necessary thing turns from a burden into a ladder. Trust is built in private. Every completed duty raises the level from which you actually live your life. Over time, you become less afraid of correction, more honest with yourself, less dependent on being threatened before you act. And this inner readiness eventually starts to change your outward opportunities too. People instinctively trust the person who faces things early. They trust the one who doesn't hide from facts, the worker who finishes without needing to be chased, the leader who corrects course without making excuses, the colleague who speaks up before real damage builds, the person who handles resources responsibly before waste turns into loss. Late obedience might eventually solve a problem, but early obedience is what actually builds trust. And trust is one of the great currencies of any real achievement. A person who has earned trust tends to receive cooperation, responsibility, and genuine opportunity. A person without it has to struggle against quiet suspicion, even when their ability is perfectly real. Don't damage your own trust by waiting until pressure forces you to do what principle already asked of you. If you owe someone something, communicate before the debt turns into dishonor. If you can't keep a promise, say so before the failure blindsides the other person. If you've made an error, admit it before concealment lets it grow larger. If a plan is starting to weaken, correct it before the whole thing collapses in public. These moments can feel humbling, and that's fine. Chosen humility now tends to prevent forced humiliation later, and there's a real difference between the two. Humility is truth you choose to accept. Humiliation is truth forced on you after pride refused to bend on its own. Choose humility. It's the gentler teacher by a wide margin. Pride, more than almost anything else, is the great enemy of necessary action. Pride insists you shouldn't have to do this. Pride worries about what people will think. Pride would rather quietly manage appearances than actually repair what's broken underneath them. But appearance can't hold up against reality forever. If an account is wrong, appearance can't balance it. If a habit is destructive, appearance can't make it harmless. If a relationship is damaged, appearance can't restore the trust on its own. If an ability is undeveloped, appearance can't produce real excellence. Reality eventually speaks up, one way or another. Let it speak now, while you can still answer it with some dignity intact. Pride also tends to resent starting small. It wants the correction to be dramatic, impressive, worthy of an audience. But most life-changing corrections actually begin plainly. One honest record, 1 hour of real study, one overdue apology, one deliberate refusal, one finished task, one decision to finally stop doing what's been quietly weakening you. Don't look down on the plain beginning. It might be the exact door that leads to a genuinely powerful life. Becoming one person inside yourself. The necessary thing is rarely glamorous at first. It tends to be quiet, practical, and unnoticed by anyone but you. But it carries real weight because it contains the force of alignment. Once you actually do it, your life starts agreeing with your own judgment instead of arguing against it constantly. That agreement produces a specific kind of peace. Not the absence of problems, but the absence of internal division. You might still have real difficulties ahead. You might still face opposition, delay, uncertainty. But inwardly, you're no longer split against yourself. You're not pretending. You're not negotiating with a truth you already know. You're no longer quietly betraying yourself through postponement. That inner unity is a form of strength in itself. A divided person tires quickly, even without doing very much. Part of them wants progress. Part of them protects comfort. Part of them wants real success. Part of them keeps obeying fear. Part of them talks about discipline. Part of them keeps delaying the first actual step. That constant internal argument consumes a huge amount of energy that could otherwise go towards something useful. Necessity, obeyed, ends the division. It forces a choice. And once you choose rightly and act on it, energy starts to gather instead of scatter. Your mind stops wasting itself on argument. Your will stops weakening through repeated postponement. The day in front of you receives real direction. Your future receives some genuine protection. This is why doing the necessary thing is never just about solving one isolated problem. It's about becoming one whole person on the inside. Someone whose judgment, speech, decisions, and actual conduct have started moving in the same direction at the same time. A person like that doesn't have to be loud or dramatic to carry real weight. Comfort can't easily buy them off. Fear can't easily stop them cold. Criticism can't easily confuse them. Delay can't easily talk them out of what they already know needs to happen. They've simply learned to obey what must be done before circumstance has to raise its voice at them. Preparing before life asks. Once obedience becomes a real part of someone's character, they eventually reach a further stage. They stop waiting for necessity to show up only in moments of trouble, and they start actively seeking it out in moments of opportunity. The strongest version of this kind of person doesn't merely ask, "What do I need to correct before life forces my hand?" They start asking a bigger question. What do I need to do right now so that life can trust me with more later? That second question lifts a person well above simple survival mode. Most people only do the necessary thing after real pain has made delay impossible. They correct course because pressure finally trapped them. They change because a genuine loss frightened them badly enough. They finally get serious because the consequence spoke louder than comfort ever could. But the stronger path is different. It doesn't wait to be cornered. It starts asking, ahead of time, what responsibility is going to require, and begins preparing before the demand ever arrives. It builds real capacity in advance of the opportunity that will eventually call for it. If you want more wealth, ask what habits need to be built before the wealth shows up. If you want to lead others, ask what self-command needs to be developed before people start depending on your judgment. If you want influence, ask what kind of character needs to protect your words from becoming careless. If you want more freedom, ask what order needs to be established first, so that freedom doesn't collapse into confusion the moment you have it. Life doesn't only force correction on people. It also quietly tests preparation. Someone who refuses necessary discipline in small matters shouldn't be surprised when larger matters stay just out of reach. They might complain that opportunity never came, but opportunity may simply have been waiting for evidence. Waiting to see whether this person can finish what they start, handle what they earn responsibly, speak the truth even under pressure, control their own appetites, keep a confidence, and keep going without needing applause the whole way through. Opportunity tends to wait outside a house that's still ruled by disorder. If you want life to trust you with more, start treating what you already have as serious training. Today's small task is training. Today's income, however modest, is training. Today's difficulty is training. Today's relationships are training. Nothing in front of you right now is really too small, because it's quietly shaping the person your future is going to require. Don't dismiss your current assignment. It may be exactly the ground your future capacity is being tested on. If you're careless with today's small responsibility, you're building an argument against being trusted with tomorrow's larger one. If you're faithful with today's small responsibility, you're building the evidence that more can safely be handed to you. Command before reward. The first real reward of doing the necessary thing is rarely money, recognition, or any outward advantage. It's command. Command over yourself, over your habits, over your responses, over your own direction. This kind of command is a form of wealth before wealth ever shows up. It's a form of success before that success becomes visible to anyone else. It's a form of influence before other people ever recognize it in you. Without this inner command, outward gain tends to be dangerous. With it, outward gain finally has something solid underneath it. Don't seek a reward that's larger than the command you've actually built to hold it. Build the command first, and the reward becomes far safer to receive. A great many people are quietly ruined by getting exactly what they wanted before they developed what was necessary to actually hold on to it well. They wanted money without judgment, and the money got wasted. They wanted authority without humility, and the authority revealed their pride. They wanted recognition without inner steadiness, and the recognition made them dependent on constant praise just to feel okay. They wanted freedom without self-government, and the freedom quietly turned into drift. Don't ask life to hand you something your current character isn't yet able to govern well. Ask instead what needs strengthening. Then go strengthen it, willingly, before the bigger thing arrives. The necessary thing in front of you might be the one missing pillar. It might not look impressive from the outside, but the whole structure can't stand without it. A person might have talent, ambition, and courage, and still lack order. Another might have imagination but lack the ability to finish anything. Another might have real knowledge but lack the willingness to act on it. Another might have generosity but no boundaries at all. Another might have desire but never build an actual plan. A single missing pillar can quietly limit the entire building. Find yours. Don't go looking for it with shame. That just wastes energy on the wrong target. Search for it with a kind of quiet authority instead. The point isn't to condemn yourself. The point is to strengthen exactly the place that would otherwise break you the moment your life expanded. Ask yourself plainly, what quality, if I built it starting now, would make me genuinely more trustworthy with greater responsibility? What weakness, if left ignored, would become dangerous the moment I actually succeeded at something bigger? What discipline, practiced daily, would meaningfully change the direction of my results? What truth, if finally obeyed, would free up energy that's currently trapped in avoidance? Answer without dressing it up, then act. From insight to identity, there's no real greatness in seeing the necessary thing clearly and still refusing to do it. Insight without follow-through can quietly become its own form of pride. A person can understand their own weakness in perfect detail, describe it beautifully, discuss it endlessly with anyone who will listen, and still remain its servant, simply because they haven't yet acted against it. Don't become skilled at describing the prison you're in. Walk out of it instead. That door almost always is opened by a definite act, not a feeling, not a theory, not a promise made in a moment of high emotion. A definite act. The record finally opened and reviewed honestly. The apology actually spoken. The harmful practice actually ended. The study actually begun. The work actually completed. The unhealthy association actually corrected. The truth actually faced. The schedule actually kept. Action is what turns understanding into real power. Once action starts, keep it going long enough for it to become a new standard, not just a single good moment. A lot of people do the necessary thing once and then quietly slide back into the old pattern. They mistake one act of obedience for full transformation. But character isn't formed by one act alone. One act simply opens the new record. Repetition is what actually establishes it. Don't just visit discipline occasionally. Live inside it. If financial order matters to you, keep that order consistently, not just once. If study matters, study repeatedly, not in a single burst. If health matters, choose strength again and again, not just on days you feel motivated. If honest speech matters, practice it repeatedly, in ordinary conversations, not only in dramatic ones. If finishing what you start matters, complete things repeatedly, as a pattern, not as an exception. The repeated act eventually becomes identity. At first, you might say, I'm trying to become disciplined. Later, if you stay faithful to it, you won't need to say anything at all. The discipline will simply speak through your results. Quiet, consistent transformation is stronger than any loud declaration of intention ever was. The necessary thing keeps changing. As you grow, understand that the necessary thing itself will keep changing. What was necessary yesterday might not be sufficient tomorrow. Someone who has mastered basic accounts may now need to learn how to actually invest. Someone who has mastered personal discipline may now need to learn how to lead others. Someone who has mastered courage in private may now need to practice responsibility in public. Someone who has mastered one skill may now need to learn how to organize it into real service for others. Growth creates new necessity. Don't resent that. It simply means life is inviting you higher. Each new level comes with its own necessary thing attached to it. The real trap is wanting the new level while clinging to the habits of the old one. Wanting a bigger reward with the same old standards, wanting greater influence while carrying the same emotional weak spots, wanting broader opportunity while keeping the same lack of order underneath it all. Enlargement always requires some adjustment. When life starts asking more of you, don't waste energy accusing it of being unfair. Ask instead, what's the next requirement here? Then go meet it. A person who keeps meeting the next requirement over and over becomes genuinely uncommon, not because they never feel resistance, but because they stop letting resistance make the final decision. They feel the same reluctance everyone else feels. They face the same inconvenience, the same uncertainty, the same fear of being judged. But they've learned a slightly higher law. What needs to be done must not be ruled by how it happens to feel in the moment. That law gives them a real advantage. While others wait for the right mood, they move by principle. While others wait for pressure to build, they move by foresight. While others wait to be rescued, they move by taking responsibility. While others wait for the crisis to arrive, they quietly correct the cause well before it does. That's how a life's direction is actually shaped, usually long before anyone else notices it happening. The world tends to see the visible rise and call it sudden, but it never saw the private obedience underneath it. It didn't see the temptations that were quietly refused, the habits that were corrected, the study that got finished, the accounts that got reviewed honestly, the pride that got humbled, the fear that got mastered, the duty that finally got completed. Nothing about it was actually sudden. It was simply prepared patiently out of view. Choosing dignity. Prepare now. Don't wait for life to strip away your options one by one. Don't wait for a gentle warning to escalate into a hard command. Don't wait for a neglected matter to become public, expensive, and genuinely painful. Don't wait until you're forced under pressure to do the very thing you could have done earlier with dignity intact. Dignity belongs to the person who obeys early. Regret tends to belong to the person who keeps delaying again and again. Choose dignity. If the necessary thing is difficult, let it be difficult. That isn't a reason to refuse it. If it's humbling, let it humble you. Humility is often exactly the door strength walks through. If it's slow, let it be slow. Slow, steady correction beats a sudden collapse every time. If it's unseen by anyone but you, let it stay unseen. The roots that nobody sees are what hold up the visible tree. You don't need applause for obedience. The real reward begins on the inside, whether or not anyone else is watching. You start to sleep differently once you're no longer running from your own judgment. You walk differently once unfinished duty stops piling up behind you. You speak differently once your private conduct actually matches your public words. You decide differently once you know you're no longer quietly negotiating with a truth you've already accepted. This inner agreement is a genuine form of power. It's hard to defeat a person who isn't divided against themselves. They may still meet real opposition, but they don't hand that opposition any extra help by betraying their own command. They may still face delay, but delay doesn't become a permanent excuse. They may still suffer real loss, but the loss doesn't turn them into someone who simply drifts from then on. They've built the habit of necessary action, and that habit becomes something close to a fortress. Guard it. Don't slide back into old patterns just because one duty has been completed. After you finish one necessary thing, ask for the next one, not with anxiety, but with a kind of quiet readiness. What's the next correction that will prevent a future weakness from taking hold? What's the next discipline that will genuinely increase your capacity? What's the next piece of service that will make your ability actually useful to someone else, not just to you? This is how a person advances without needing to wait for disaster to move them. They turn necessity into a kind of daily counselor. They ask before trouble has to demand an answer. They prepare before opportunity even knocks. They correct before exposure. They study before the responsibility arrives. They save before the pressure builds. They speak the truth before resentment has time to harden. They act before regret has the chance to fully form. A life built this way isn't free of hardship. Nobody's is. But it becomes free of a great deal of unnecessary hardship. It isn't free of responsibility, but responsibility stops arriving like an enemy. It starts arriving like the natural next weight for someone who's been training, quietly, to carry more. Return now. Remember this, plainly. The necessary thing you've been avoiding is very often the exact thing holding the door closed. You might be asking yourself why progress feels delayed, why confidence keeps slipping, why peace seems to keep escaping you, why opportunities keep passing by, why the same problem keeps returning in a new outfit. The answer might not be some deep mystery at all. It might simply be waiting quietly inside the duty you've been refusing to face. Do that duty, not tomorrow, as another idea to think about, but now, as an actual beginning. Make the call, open the account, start the study, finish the work, end the harmful habit, speak the truth, set the boundary, address the debt, keep the promise, Strengthen the body, guard the hour, choose the plan, correct the weakness. Whatever your particular necessary thing happens to be, don't let it stay a shadow hanging over your future. Bring it deliberately into the light of real action. Life tends to be generous toward the person who learns early. It tends to be far more severe toward the person who refuses to learn until they're forced to. Both are, in their own way, forms of teaching, but one preserves your dignity along the way, while the other often breaks your pride through real pain. Choose the gentler teacher. Choose discipline before consequence. Choose responsibility before crisis. Choose command before compulsion. And if you've already delayed for years, don't waste another season condemning yourself for it. Condemnation is useless unless it turns into action. Let your past instruct you. Don't let it chain you in place. The fact that the duty is still there means it can still be faced. The fact that you can see it clearly means your own command can still return. Let it return, starting now. Do the necessary thing. Do it with humility. Do it with courage. Do it with real exactness. Do it before life has to force it out of you. And when it's finally done, you'll find that you accomplished more than simply completing a task. You will have reclaimed real authority over yourself. You will have ended a long, quiet argument between your conscience and your conduct. You will have lifted a hidden weight off your own mind. You will have grown stronger at precisely the point where delay used to make you weak. That strength doesn't stay contained to one area. It follows you into your work, into your decisions, into your relationships, into your ambitions, into whatever comes next. Because a person who does the necessary thing before they're forced to has quietly learned one of the deepest secrets behind any real achievement. Life does not have to drive the person who has already chosen to lead themselves.